Sorry to hear you're having trouble with the slope, especially in standard form. So I wanted to make this video just for you so that maybe I can help walk you through it. And just kind of go through the lesson and talk about it and see some things you might experience and maybe even give you some pointers that might help. So if we go through it really quick, we're dealing with converting lines between linear form and slope-intercept form. Standard form, slope-intercept form. Okay. Now those two lines, slope-intercept form is like this: y equals mx plus b, and m is my slope, and plus b right here is my y-intercept. Okay. Now that y-intercept just means that x is 0. If you think about it, when you draw a graph, beautiful straight lines that they are, my y-intercept goes up and down right here. So my x value, like this, would be -2, -1, and 1, and 2. Right here in the middle is 0. So my y-intercept is when x equals 0. Okay, that comes in very handy. So let's continue on. Now this standard form is ax plus by equals c something, I don't know. These are just numbers. The a is just a number in front of the x, and the b is just a number in front of the y. Okay? So let's go ahead and kind of see how these work out. Okay? I'll skip that. Now we deal with algebra a lot here. Like, we have to solve for y. Okay? Now what is y? Y is this part right here. Okay? Now, the way I always suggest looking at it is if you have a package in the airport or in a train station or something like that, and it's a scary package, no one knows what it is, what do? They evacuate everyone out of the airport to get that package alone before they open it. So when you're dealing with something like this, you got 2x minus y equals 4. Always think of the y and whatever's right in front of it as my box. That's my package. Okay? So I have to get everyone outside of that box out of the building before I can open the box. Everything outside the box deals only with addition and subtraction. Everything inside the box deals only with multiplication and division. Okay? We have to get that 2x out of the building before we open the box. So outside the box, we're only dealing with addition and subtraction, nothing else. So right here we have 2x. How do I make that go away using only addition or subtraction? Well, I would minus 2x. Okay? Whatever I do to one side, I always have to do to the other side. Okay? Now, that leaves me with my box equals, and I have 4 minus 2x. Okay? What's inside my box? Well, inside my box is negative y, or negative 1y, right? There's only one y there. So negative 1y. Now I've got to get that y by itself. No negatives or anything else. So now I'm inside the box. So when I'm inside the box, I deal with multiplication or division. So I'm going to divide by -1, and divide by -1, and divide by -1. You divide everything by that -1. Okay? And that leaves us with just y equals, because a -1 divided by -1 equals 1. 1 times y is just y. 4 divided by -1, we're just going to leave that as negative 4. Anything divided by negative 1 just changes it to negative. Negative 2x divided by negative 1 is positive 2x. Now this is almost in my y equals mx plus b setup. Okay, but we notice I want the x in front. So I'm just going to move this in front of the negative 4. And I have y equals, and that's just 2x, positive 2x, and that's negative 4. So that's how we can get from a standard equation to a slope-intercept form, where we have the slope and the y-intercept. Okay? Let's go ahead and I wanted to pause there for a second and see, let you finish writing any notes you had. Okay, now same thing here. We have y minus 2x equals 5. We want to solve for y, so that and everything in front of it goes in the box. Everything outside the box is either addition or subtraction. So how do I make negative 2x go away? Using only addition or subtraction, I'm going to plus 2x every single time. I just want it to go to 0. And whatever I do to the one side, I do to the other. And I'm left with y equals 2x and a positive 5. Notice I put the 2x in front just to begin with. Okay, that gives us the y equals mx plus b format right away. Okay, now I wanted to show you something. Okay, and these don't go with the lesson so much, is just observations I've made throughout my life. Okay. Now, if you remember, I said the y-intercept is just when x is 0. Okay, so if I turn that to 0, let me rewrite that. Y minus 2 times 0, and then equals 5. What is 2 times 0, or negative 2 times 0? Negative 2 times 0 is just 0. It goes away. And I see my y-intercept is 5. Okay, so when x is 0, y is 5. So I know at the end of my problem, it's going to be a plus 5. Okay, and that works with just about anything. I could have 5x plus 2y equals 4. Now when I change that to 0, that 5x goes away, and I just divide by 2 to get that y by itself. So my y-intercept is going to be a plus 2. Okay, so that's just one observation I made. You can always find the y-intercept by changing x to 0 and getting rid of that, and then just solving for y. And that tells you your y-intercept. Another observation I've made in the past is that your slope in this format right here is always negative x over y. Negative x over y. If you can somehow write that in your notes and remember that, then you can always just convert these problems right over. Well, what is x? X is negative 2, right? That number right there. So what's negative negative 2? That would be positive 2 over, and what is y? Y is 1. What is 2 divided by 1? 2. And we see that our slope matches that. Okay, so we can get the slope and the y-intercept using just observations. With that in mind, let's look at this. Okay, we know the y-intercept is when x equals 0, right? So when x equals 0, this goes away and just turns into a 0. So we're going to plus 2, and that gets rid of this, and we have y equals 2. Well, there's our y-intercept right there, 2. Okay. Now, my negative x over y doesn't work here because it's not in standard form. Okay. In order for it to be standard form, that x would have to be over here. It's not. In this case, it's easier to just solve for y. So plus 2, and we have y equals 4x plus 2. Okay, because this goes away. And remember, we're outside the box. That's why I'm adding. Always addition, subtraction outside the box. Now I have this one, and I see my slope is 4, and my y-intercept is plus 2, so there's my 2. And so I'm going to put a 4 right there. Okay, with that same thing in mind, now we're down here. Now this one will work. Negative x over y. What's my x? I have a 1 right here. And so I have negative 1 over 2, negative x over y. So there's my negative 1 over 2 right there, and that's my slope. Okay, and what is my y-intercept? My y-intercept is just when x equals 0. So we just ignore the x right there. And we have 2y equals 10. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Divide by 2. And I have y equals 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Okay. Now you can solve this the other way. And let me show you how to do that really quick. We have 2y plus x equals 10. I'm solving for y. So everything outside the box is plus or minus. To get rid of this x, I have to minus x. And I got 2y equals negative 1x. And I'm just going to put the 1 there and make it easier. And then I still have my positive 10. So I put the x in front. That's all I did. Now I'm going to divide by 2 to get that y by itself. And I know I'm dividing because it's inside the box now. So the 2 goes away, and I have y equals negative 1/2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay. So I'll give you a second to try that last one. Pause the video if you need to. Now my slope is always negative x over y when it's in this format. Okay? Negative x over y. What is my negative x? I have negative 6 over what is y? 3. What's negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. And to find my y-intercept, I just scribble out the x. Just like this. Get rid of the x. Now I divide both sides by 3. And I have 9 divided by 3 is 3. Because that 3 goes away, y equals 3. Okay, and again, we can solve it the other way as well. Let me do that really quick so you can see it. 6x plus 3y equals 9. And here's my box. Remember, everything connected to the y, including the sign right in front, automatically goes in that box. Everything outside the box is dealt with using addition or subtraction. Everything inside the box is multiplication or division. Okay, so here I need to get rid of this 6x using only addition or subtraction. So if I minus 6x, that'll get rid of that. And I have 3y inside the box there equals, and I'm going to put the x first. I've got negative 6x, and plus 9. You can't combine them because these are x's and these are numbers, and you can't put them together any more than you could put bananas with apples. You can't say I've got 30 banapples or something like that. That you got 10 apples and 20 bananas or whatever. So you keep them separate. Now we got to get the y by itself. We're inside the box now, so we're going to use either multiplication or division. If I multiply, that number's only going to get bigger, so I need to divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. And I have y equals, what's negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. And we see that's what we had here. And what's 9 divided by 3 is a positive 3. And that's what we had here. Okay. Now on these, it wants us to find an x-intercept and a y-intercept. You know how we find the y-intercept. We find the y-intercept by crossing off the x and then solving. We would get y equals 6, right? Because we're going to divide both sides by 2. Okay, that's how we get the y-intercept. Well, we get the x-intercept the exact same method. We cover up the y. Because the x-intercept is when, if we think about it, when y equals 0, this would be 1, 2, negative 1, negative 2. So right here on the x-intercept, it would be 0. Okay, so we cover up the y and divide both sides by 3 in this case. And so the x-intercept is 4. Okay. Now there's many ways to do that, and one of the ways it wants you to try it is to graph it. But here's an interesting thing. When you graph it, if you can do it this way and just say, hey, the x-intercept is 4, we divide it by 3, x equals 4. That means at 4, it crosses the x-axis. Now we find the y-axis. So divide both sides by 2. Y is 6. So let's say this is 6 up here. Now you have 2 points. You can draw the line. So you can graph a standard equation just by doing that. That's called the cover-up method. Okay. Now this format here is called the point-slope form. Okay. This can get kind of confusing. You know, look at the equation. What are the values of y1, x1? Okay. Y1, x1 is just a point on the line. Okay. Now, if you think about it, this is the formula you need to watch for. It's always y minus y1. Okay. X minus x1. Okay. Now, that basically means that this number right here and this number right here, I'm just scribbling them out there, but those are what I want you to look for. That's a negative x1, negative y1. So what's a negative 2? Y1 is a positive 2. So you change the sign of whatever's right here, okay? And you change the sign of whatever's right here. So my x1 is a negative 3. Okay? So there's our values of y1, x1. Okay? We just change the sign of whatever's written, because it's a negative on both of them. Okay? Now m is our slope, so that's still our slope right there. Okay? So we need to remember that as well. Let's see if we have examples. Okay? Now I want to plot this point. I'm not going to play the video, but I want to plot this point. Okay? we have x1 and we have y1. So what do we have? We have 2 turns into a positive 2. That's where this comes from. 3 turns into a negative 2, or negative 3, excuse me. And that's where this comes from. Okay? So we're going to, and I'm just going to play this without sound. You can watch the video as you go on. But we've got our negative 3, 2, and that's what goes right there. Okay? Now with that in mind, we have the slope. The slope is 1/4. So that means we're going to go up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's going to be our second line right there. And we can see what the line looks like by just connecting the dots. Okay? And so that's how you deal with that. Just always take the negative of that, and that's your y, and the negative of that, and that's your x. Okay, so we want to convert this into slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form. Well, the easiest way to do that is to just solve it. Okay, what's 1/4 times x is 1/4 x. And what's 1/4 times 4? See, I'm just distributing right there. 1/4 times 4 is 1. Okay? And I have y minus 1 in the front. So now I'm going to plus 1 to both sides. And I have y equals negative, excuse me, that's non-negative. That's 1/4 x plus 2. Okay? And that's how you convert it. You just simply distribute, and then you add the 1 or whatever that number is to both sides after you distribute. And that's the slope-intercept form. So this gives you an idea of things to watch for as you're going through this. There's lots of different things, different methods. There's videos here that try to help explain it. So we want to write that in slope-intercept form and in standard form. Well, what's our slope-intercept form? We have to distribute. Okay, and then we would get y equals, what's 1/2 of 4? That would be 2x. And what's 1/2 of negative 6? That would be negative 3 plus 7. Combine the negative 3 and the 7, we have y equals 2x plus 4. So there's our slope-intercept form. Well, how do I get my standard form? Simply subtract the x from both sides. And then that would give me negative 2x plus y equals 4. Okay, and same thing. That's now my standard form. All you have to do is just get it in slope-intercept form and then subtract the x from both sides. That's all you have to do. Okay, so if we need to graph that equation, what's negative 1? Remember, we just changed the sign, so our x is 1, comma. We changed the sign, negative 3. So 1, negative 1, 2, 3. That's where that dot's going to go. And our slope is negative 2 over 3. So down 2 over 1, 2, 3. And there's that line, that point, and then you can just connect the dots. Okay. Hopefully this has helped some. Watch the videos, go through things. This is the thing that you need to remember. These are the formulas that will be very, very helpful to you. You want to make sure they're in your notes. You want to make sure they're memorized as best as you can. They come in handy throughout algebra to know them and understand them. And yeah, and then you've got your materials and your quiz coming up. So hopefully this has helped you. If not, please let me know, and I'll try to figure out something else. If you can tell me exactly where you're getting stumped, that would be a lot easier. But let me know if this helps as well.